Okay, sorry about that. Thanks everyone for joining us Friday morning. Technology is not my friend. I'm gonna get a big old sticky note and put it on the webinar that says record so that I remember to hit the button. That's exactly what happened last week. It was totally my fault. I did not hit the record button, so I apologize. So we're gonna have a redo of our listings conversation, which I think was pretty amazing. You all are very lucky this week because Emily Selix, who is part of my management team and is heads up our REO and listings departments, and she sounds amazing because she's got a cold today, so she has a super sexy voice. So say hi, Emily.
Hello, everyone.
So we did have a great conversation, and I just want to kind of go over that again because I think it was super, super important for those of you who deal with listings, whether you're on a team, have a transaction coordination company, work at a transaction coordination company, or our personal executive assistant, whatever. I think people shy away from, I think there's two things kind of in the listings world that we talked about, is people either want to shy away from listings or it's kind of an afterthought. They focus on the contract close portion and kind of forget about listings. Being brutally honest, just to give you guys a little bit of history of Reeboks, we did that as well. Our first year, because we developed the listings department about a year in.
Yeah, it was about a year and a half in.
Yeah, so our first year, really our focus was the contract to close. We were doing listings, but we weren't doing them at the level that we do now. So I would say one of the first things with it is really look at the listings part as an opportunity. We didn't even understand the opportunity when we first started building out the department. When we first started building out the department, it was really more of a, how can we just take some pressure off of the contract to close side, the file management side. And the really interesting thing is over the last 4 years, we now have clients that have an in-house person managing the contract to close portion, their executive assistant or whatever. As they were growing, the executive assistant, the TC, just didn't have enough bandwidth, but they wanted to make sure that they were comfortable in their position and they didn't want to bring on another full-time admin. And so we have some clients where we manage just the listing portion of the contract. That's how much our listings department has grown. So that's why I wanted to have Emily on for 2 weeks and discuss listings and kind of discuss how she's changed that perception. So we wanted to start with expectations, right? So expectations for the client, for the agent. Talk to me.
Well, I think it's important on both aspects, for the agent and as well for the client seller. I think when it comes to the agent, when we're working in a TC platform, like where they have somebody assisting them in it, I think with the listings specifically, there should be a pretty drawn out expectation of what the agent will handle, and then also what the agent is going to be responsible for still, so that there's a clear understanding of where the help is going to be. And, with a lot of the agents that we assist with listings, like you were saying earlier, we try to take the pressure off of them as well. Help them make sure they have all the paperwork, et cetera, and have a clear drawn out expectation of where we're going to fit in. And then I think one of the other things that's incredibly important is the expectation for the seller. I don't know personally like what it is to sell a home, but I've seen how it can definitely be a very scary process for a seller. Absolutely. So being able to have them know from the get-go what the process is going to be, everything from when they sign those documents to getting the photo shoot done for the lockbox, the sign, we try to keep them as informed as possible of what's going to take place and timing so that they're more comfortable through the process as well. So I think for expectation, it's incredibly important for the agent to be really well aware of what we're going to do as the assistant or TC, and then for the seller to be aware of the process. So it's a lot more of a smooth transaction for them.
Well, and I think you hit on a really important point. And I know if there's any realtors out there watching us, I was a realtor for 10 years, and I'll be brutally honest because I won't speak for other realtors. I'm sure there's people who did it at a much higher level than me, but that process was really almost an afterthought because I listed a lot of homes. So it was just let's get the documents signed, let's get the photographer out there, like let's go. And a lot of times I was forgetting about the fact that, this was my whatever number listing, but for this seller, they're prepping the home, they're you know, so there's a lot of questions, and I talk fast anyway, I move fast. And so that was something that was really nice when I was realtor, is knowing that my executive assistant was going to be that kind of buffer. And I know our listing plan, and she wouldn't criticize me because she would say the same thing. I know our listing plan at Reeboks is way more fleshed out than our listing plan when I was an agent and had an executive assistant, just because it's now its own separate department. So we've had time to do that. Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think that expectations piece is something that you can't you can't put enough emphasis on. So when you're talking about setting up the agents and the sellers for expectations, or how you set their expectations, give me an idea of kind of what that looks like in the real world. So you're getting, you know, are you getting listing documents? Are you preparing listing documents? What's happening there?
Well, one of the things that I know can be very scary for people that don't know the real estate world or have never done or sold a house is the paperwork aspect. And there's a lot of forms that get signed through the process and, you know, explained. And one thing that we've added as a tool for a few of our agents that we work with is they'll order a listing package from our team. We'll prepare the listing documents, and whether it's being sent out through digitally for signature, through DigiSign, DocuSign, whatever, or if it's going to be done in an in-person appointment, we have actually created a form that the agent will give us the verbiage of each explanation, a quick blurb of whatever each form is going to be. And we turn that into a great PDF, and it's actually going to be the first page of the listing package. And we take the verbiage from the agent, so they have the option and the ability to explain each form to their sellers through, you know, it being on a document. And as the sellers are signing it electronically, they have that explanation of what the form is in front of them, because a lot of times it's not going to make sense to that seller. And then it's a great tool for an agent that's going to do an in-person appointment, because then they can also say, you know, as we go over these documents, I have this form here as well for you that kind of goes over a little bit more of a deeper explanation of what these forms are. And it really gives that seller or that client some more comfort in what they're signing and get a better understanding of the forms. Because, you know, we work in these forms every single day. And like you're saying, as you as an agent, they just kind of seem like second nature. But for that seller to have that extra understanding and that extra tool, and they can even keep that with them, and it's all part of their package, they can really understand what they're signing. And I think it's a great asset. And a lot of TCs, like us, for example, we're not licensed, so we don't have the ability to explain those forms. But if we have the ability to get that verbiage from the agent and turn that into a format for them to use, then it's another availability for us to take that weight off their shoulders as well.
Well, and you know, one thing, because I remember when we created this form, because I had been licensed for a really long time, and as Reeboks grew, you know, I gave up my license so we could work with other brokerages. And that was really a shift for me. Like how, you know, because prior I could just call someone and say, hey, you know, this is what this form is. This is what this form means, because I was licensed. And so that was something we really had to get creative on, because we want to provide that level of customer service. We don't want that to fall back on the agent, because, you know, then why do they have us? And yet, how do we kind of, you know, make sure that the client's getting the information and we're not the ones that are explaining the forms? For those of you that are listening out there or watching this at a later date, this form is actually very, very, very simple. We literally just send an email to the agent. For those agents who are interested in doing it, we love to have this form. And we just say, please explain this form and this form, and just go through that pre-listing packet that they have and just say, you know, please just explain these in a couple of sentences. It's not a one page for each form. It's literally just a few sentences in layman's terms, so that the client can truly understand exactly what's going on. It's beautiful. You can also dress it up. I mean, you can brand it, you can everything.
We can custom. I mean, we've done a couple for people that we've customized, and like we've talked about before, the forms that you're explaining can be in the same order as the packet that they actually have in their hand, and it can be very customized to this specific agent or team, which can be very, very helpful as well to make sure you've got all the documents on your appointment. It's almost a checklist in sense too for the agent. And then, you know, it just really helps the seller understand what they're signing.
Agreed. And yeah, having that extra, we love checklists. We love action plans. We love marking something off. So if you're preparing forms, if you're an executive assistant, a TC, whoever in that admin role, or even if you're an agent and you don't have admin support yet, this is a really great idea because it's like, it gives you that additional, okay, do I have all these pieces? Just a really quick check. It sits on top of everything else. Like you said, whether you're sending it digitally or whether you're in person. One thing I would say, if you send it digitally, make sure that you put an initial on that first page so that they have to stop on that first page, because DocuSign, some of those others, it scrolls through to where they're going to need to initial, so they may miss that first page. So you always want to make sure that you're putting like an initial on that first page so that they're seeing those items, if that makes sense. Yeah. Cool. I think that's awesome. So, and I know we talk about expectation all the time. If you have a hiccup in the process, whether it's contract to close or whether it's listings, it really doesn't matter. I would look at what your expectations are, because if you can solve some of those problems in the beginning so that they never come up, that's always good. We talked about form explanation. Oh, I love this one. And I'll be honest, I never even had thought about this one until you put it on the list. One of the key things that we had to learn with agents was the input sheet. It is something we adore. It is something that some people really don't like to do, but kind of jump into the input portion, and I'll give the realtor perspective on it as well.
Okay, I was like, I'll give you the TC perspective.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, I think as an admin, we love input sheets. They're amazing. Yeah. They're kind of like candy when it comes to a file, because it can make things very, very, very clear. When we go to build an incomplete listing, there's a couple different words for it: incomplete, in progress, draft listing. As we set that listing up for the agent, an input sheet is incredibly helpful because it can give us as much information as we need. Sometimes what you're finding in tax, you can't complete an input sheet with that information. So it's a really thorough checklist. Input sheets I've seen some agents use on appointments. They actually use that as their notepad. They can take down additional notes, but then we're getting thorough information from when they've done that walkthrough. But the input sheet coming over to the TC and then being able to build that listing view is for us amazing. We obviously, like I said, as a TC, we do love it. Now, we do have some agents that choose not to use input sheets, and that's great too. Like we've found a way to work around that. We've gotten to really know our tax websites, our school websites, and per county or city or area that we work in, and we're still able to put together as much of a listing as we can with the bare minimum from what we can find from tax. We don't specifically put any information in a listing unless it comes from an input sheet or from a justified website that we know is accurate information. But, and like we've talked about before in the past, where you may have gone on a listing appointment with a client, 4 months ago, and they weren't quite ready then, and then they now are ready. You still have that input sheet from when you had the appointment with them, and it can really help you, agents that are trying to write public remarks, etc. It's a really valuable tool that I think people kind of look past a little bit. It's not just for data entry. I think it really can be a value for, getting thorough, accurate, and building a really great listing. And I just love input sheets, but
Well, and that's exactly what I was going to say. Is I remember, because when I brought on my executive assistant, Katie, who's now with Reeboks, thank God. So when she came on board, I was very much one of those agents that was like, don't want to do an input sheet. I don't need extra work. Pull it off the previous listing. Well, I ended up paying for a shed. Because the time had removed the shed, but the listing still had the shed. So, or they were taking the shed with them, of all things. Who takes a shed? But it is what it is. It's Alaska. So, so I ended up paying for a shed because the shed was on the listing. Not Katie's fault. I always reviewed the listing prior to it going live. She had taken the information as I'd instructed from the previous listing. And so after that experience, because it was like a $500 shed, we were like, okay, how do we stop this? And so we went to the input sheet. The funny thing about it is I thought I was doing the input sheet for her. Like that was my perception as an agent, is okay, I'm going to do this input sheet for you as an admin because you've never been to the home. But just like you said, the amazing thing about it is as I got into being comfortable with having an input sheet, it was an amazing tool because we would save it. And then 4 months, 6 months, a year later, because we go out there and we take a look at the home and they can't sell this year. And so a year later, I could go back to that input sheet and it had the details of that listing. It had the details of that home. So I didn't feel like I had to go through, I was basically just updating. So it really became a valuable tool for me, especially as we got busier, because, I think I remember everything about a home, and I'm sure agents out there, if you're watching this, you think you do too. You don't, you forgot that, oh yeah, they had, when you go to fill out MLS, it's like, well, did they have a ceiling fan or did they not? Did they have this? Did they not? And the pictures only tell you so much, I mean, there's a lot of things that the pictures aren't going to tell you. And so input sheet is just something that I think is super valuable, not only for the admin side, but also for the agent. And it can be a super powerful tool. I know some of our agents too send that input sheet after they've filled it out, or they'll have the seller fill it out even, so that the seller confirms, hey, this is what we're going to put in the MLS. Does this look right to you? Just kind of as a checks and
that's what I was going to piggyback on next as well, is some of these clients, most sellers don't understand or aren't aware of what the actual listings, like most people's MLS, they're not really sure what that's going to contain. And I think it also gives a lot of transparency for the client to know exactly what kind of information on their home is going to be on the listing itself, and kind of give them some knowledge and power in knowing what's going to be there to advertise their home as well. We, like you were saying, we do have quite a few clients that actually use that as a tool during listing appointments to let the seller check those boxes, let the seller put those options in. And then they're super confident as well going into the listing, going active, that they know exactly what's going to be out there as well.
Absolutely. And it gives that seller the opportunity to say, oh, you forgot we have a central vac system. Did you not see, we disguised all the holes in the wall because we didn't want to see them, but we really do have it. Some of those kind of things, because as you're walking through a home, there's only so much that you can see. So yeah, I think the input sheet is something that's overlooked quite frequently. And I think it's something that shouldn't be. You wanted me to remind you about this one. One thing when we're talking about listings and what can go wrong and what can go right and all those kind of things, I cannot express how important your relationships with our vendors have been over the years. And I thought I had really amazing relationships with vendors. But when Emily's, and just to give you guys an idea, Emily's crew has brought on about 1,200 listings this year right now. Brought them on live. Yeah, I think we're right about 1,200. So she is talking to the different MLSs in the different states. She's like the MLS whisperer at this point. And she can pull off, now keep in mind, I'm the owner of the company, and she can pull off things with these MLSs that are incredible. So a little bit about vendors and those relationships.
Well, I'll start with the MLS systems that we're in. I have been very thankful that I've been able to get and gain the relationships I have with my vendors, and not my vendors. I feel like they're my vendors because I work with them so often, but specifically with the MLS systems, with us being TCs, we typically have what is called like a non-licensed login. It's sometimes called mimic access, super user, assume identity. So we're able to work within that agent's MLS, but then there's still the accountability, especially if you have a team working with you, as to where that work was done. And one thing as I've learned through the couple of years that I've been doing the listings department is that a lot of times when you start working with a new state or you're working in an MLS system, nobody really shows you how to use the system. No. And I am the biggest fan of most of the MLSs that we've worked in. They have these amazing tutorials and videos and literally how-tos right there available. And so I've been able to really, and some of these MLSs have incredible systems built within them and tools and stuff like that. So, but then reaching out to your local MLS and getting to know these people, because honestly, sometimes things happen in MLS that, once that status is up, you're like, well, can't take that back. Things happen. We've been able to gain good relationships with that and being able to make phone calls and, letting them help us. And then, as non-licensed, we also want to make sure that we're working within the rules and regulations that are within that state or that MLS specifically. And, respecting their rules and respecting that has always been a big piece of it. And then when you talk about the other vendors that we work with, like our photographers and our sign installers and our couriers, I think it's incredibly important to have a very personal relationship with each of them. I work with a lot of them regularly, got them on speed dial for our team. And they can really be people that can save your butt. They can really save a listing. And if people, don't even think about it with your photographer, like, oh, they're just the one taking pictures. But, there's so many good people that are within these teams that if you help them, they help you. And I think the vendor aspect of it is also something that's crucial. And I think, as we talked about before, there's a lot that goes into a listing that people don't really think about. And from the second that contract is signed with these people, you may have vendors that are going to come in and do carpet cleaning or get the locks changed or do the sign installs, get the pictures taken, staging people. So there's all these great people to have on your side that can really help you also stay on your timeline and keep those expectations flowing with the seller. And, you know, our photographers specifically that I've worked with in all states that I've been able to do them in, they are very crucial to be on your good side.
Huge.
Because I've had to make phone calls at 1 o'clock in the afternoon for a 3 p.m. photo shoot that needed to happen. And thankfully, with the relationships that we've gained, we've been able to make that work.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously vendors incredibly important on the contract to close side. We've talked about that before, you know, and we'll talk about it again. Super, super important. But on the listing side, again, I think it's something that people forget about because it's, oh, I just ordered a sign. Oh, I just ordered photos, you know, whatever, these small pieces. But I think it was even last weekend, we had a photo shoot that had to happen on a Saturday, and that particular photographer doesn't work on Saturdays. And you were able to call and make that happen. And really, the amazing part about it is that people go, well, that's great because now Reeboks looks good, but this isn't about Reeboks. This is about anybody in a TC or an admin role. What it does is it makes the agent look good. It makes the agent look knowledgeable and that they can pull those strings and they can everything else, because ultimately we're all working for that seller. We want that seller to have an amazing experience. So it's not about making us look good. It's not about anything else. It's about making that agent look like a rock star.
Well, and if I may just go ahead and roll into the next part of it, because I think we can piggyback off of this. One thing that I'm a little too passionate about my job sometimes. And one thing that I think is incredibly important, and I think this can really sum up like the whole aspect of the listings department, is that our main goal at the end, from a lot of times when you hear about the terminology from selling a home, it's sign up to sign down. But I think that most important, crucial part is before the sign goes up. And my goal at the end of it is to have what I call the pretty little listing ready to go with the bow on top. Because once that property has gone active, the home looks amazing online. The photos are arranged in the way they should be so that you feel like you're walking through the home as you look at the pictures. There's as much information as we've been able to put in there. The documents are what's really crucial to me. We want to make sure when they're in their MLS and they click that document tab, once the listing has gone active, the seller gets super excited because their home looks great. I've even had some sellers comment like, oh, if I didn't know this was my home, I would probably buy it because it's just shown so well online. And then when you have these, you know, selling agents come through that are interested in looking at the property, they have all the tools there. They have the property disclosures, they have the seller disclosures, lead-based paint stuff, CCRs, plats, everything that they need right there on that listing. And what I think is so crucial about this is it really does help everybody in the end. The seller gets excited about it. And then when there is an offer that's put on the table for the home, it's a smoother transaction for the selling agent, for those buyers that are coming through, because there's no fighting to get the property disclosure filled out. Everything is there. And I think that from a seller's aspect, like if you can get them kind of like super excited during the process, they're understanding the forms, they get excited about the photo shoot, and then their listing is live and everything is put together perfectly, you know, that's and to the best of its ability. I have seen some listings in my time that I've done this, and it's just filled out bare minimum. You can tell there wasn't really a whole lot of effort put into the listing because they would just want to get it online. But I think it's just so crucial to make it good, not just for the selling aspect of it, getting the home sold, but it gets the seller excited and it gets them, you know, kind of revved up about it. And then, like I've said, my biggest thing is we also, as an admin, and I have worked on the contract to close aspect before, it can be a struggle sometimes to get that information. And, you know, if a listing is done well and it's set up well, we're helping that admin too. Because everybody, you know, when you're working on a contract to close and you have buyer side, selling side, you want it to work for everybody. You know, you want to have a smooth transaction. And I think that really starts at the root of the listing. So I get really excited because I've seen some sellers just be so stoked about it. And you can laugh at me because you do. But I think having a pretty little listing is incredibly important. And, you know, helping the TC on that end and helping the buyer's agent on that end, having valid contact information, using that input sheet to your, you know, to your advantage. So I love when our sellers get happy about stuff. We send out a link to our sellers once their listing has gone live so they can review it. They get an opportunity to say, you know what, I kind of want to tweak this or tweak that. We're more than happy to do that. But like you mentioned before, this is all about the clients. It's not about, you know, us looking good or the, you know, anything. It's making sure that the agent is happy because their client is happy. And that is, to me, the end goal. So yes. I'll get off my soapbox now.
And you do get really passionate about it, and I love it, because I was even an agent, and like your passion just, yeah. So one thing too, I think in this age of syndication and everything being on the web, you know, you only get that one chance to make a good first impression or a great first impression. You know, you've only got a few days where that listing is going to show as a new listing. And if you don't have the right information, in some cases, it doesn't update. You know, you can go in and you can change it, but that first impression is still the one that people see. So I think
most platforms, it's, you got that first 2 to 4 hours that you're listing online is there's your syndication opportunity right there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know personally, if I was still an agent, just having that second person looking, making sure that everything's right, really taking ownership over that is absolutely huge. So one thing I always like to say, for those of you who are first on this webinar, watching it first, we are happy. We love to share our information. One of the reasons we do this webinar is to give back to the industry. So if you have questions about our forms, you'd like a sample, you absolutely can just email us at hello@agentreebox. We're happy to share any of the things that we talk about. Obviously, we won't send you any confidential information or specific to our agents, but we'll give you a template or whatever for what we do, because we feel as an industry, we can all improve together. Also, if you have a better way of doing this, like when you're listening to us and you're like, oh my goodness, you know, I have a better way, let us know, because we'd love to improve systems. We'd love to bring value to our agents and, again, to the industry as a whole. So please give us a heads up.
More knowledge to TCs. Like we love working with happy TCs because it makes for a happy file, and happy agents are happy clients. So
right, exactly. And the operations admin role in real estate, I think, is so vital, and I think is only going to get more and more vital. A lot of agents are talking about how we're going into a shifting market again, and, you know, definitely not like anything we've seen, you know, back in 2008, but we are seeing corrections. So, you know, the listings become more and more important. When you bring a listing on and it sells within a week, you're going to have a happy seller. Like, it's just the way it is. But when you bring a listing on and it's going to sit on the market for 30, 60, 90 or more days, you really have to be aware of what you're offering, because that seller is going to start getting frustrated. And so I think all these little bits and pieces that you as the operation, as the admin, can bring to the table help so much in those conversations that your agent is going to have with that seller. And I think that's just a huge value. Yeah. The final thing on this, guys, I know we only have a few minutes. The time always goes by so quickly. I don't know how. Yeah. You know, listings, like I said, it was something that I never even got into at a high level, even when I was an agent. It is probably one of the easier departments. And don't get me wrong when I say this, Emily's going to cringe. It is one of the easier departments once you get it to actually build out, because you can build a flow. There are fewer variables than in the contract to close process. And so I would encourage you that if you are a TC company or you're an admin or something like that, don't be afraid of listings. You can really flush these out. You can add little tips and tricks, you know, adding things to Zillow, having additional websites, things like that. And you can really get a really nice system down for every single listing. And then you can include that in your agent's pre-listing packet, their actual listing packet. You know, it's just a really cool department to build out, because there are so few variables. You know, contract to close, you kind of build out a structure and then everything happens. But in listings, you really do have more control, which is why Emily loves it so much. And our time's up, guys. I want to remind you, you know, we're going to have this information on our Facebook page. We also just added a page on our website, which is agentreebox.com, that has all of these recordings. So if you're not able to join us, or you have a fire you've got to put out, you can always go back and refer to those. Again, you can reach out to us at hello@agentreebox, Facebook or Instagram. You will never see me on Instagram, but Reebox is on Instagram. And of course, we have phone numbers and all that good old-fashioned stuff. So thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. If you have ideas for future webinars or any input, let us know. Next week, we will not be here because of the holiday, but we will be back the following week. So hope everybody has an amazing week and finishes off strong today. So we'll see y'all later.
Bye, everyone. Have a great weekend.